The schoolteacher stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Mojave, California, her worn leather satchel clutched tight against her chest, and found herself staring at a town so small it seemed the desert might swallow it whole before nightfall. Zara Ellsworth had traveled 3 weeks from Boston to reach this God-forsaken corner of the Mojave Desert in the summer of 1878, following a newspaper advertisement seeking a schoolteacher willing to educate children on the frontier. The heat struck her immediately, a wall of scorching air that made her wool traveling dress feel like punishment. Dust devils spun lazily down the main street, and the handful of wooden buildings looked like they were clinging to existence through sheer stubbornness. Miss Ellsworth. A weathered woman in a faded calico dress approached, shielding her eyes against the brutal sun. "I'm Martha Henderson. We exchanged letters." Zara nodded, grateful to see a friendly face. "Mrs. Henderson, thank you for meeting me. Call me Martha, dear. Nobody stands on ceremony out here." The older woman picked up one of Zara's bags. "Come along. I have a room ready for you above the general store. You must be exhausted." As they walked down the street, Zara noticed the curious stares from the townspeople. A man in dusty chaps and a sweat-stained shirt stopped mid-step to watch her pass. 2 women gossiping on a porch fell silent. Zara was used to such attention in new places, but something about the intensity of their gazes made her self-conscious. "We do not get many newcomers," Martha explained, as if reading her thoughts. "Especially not educated young ladies from back east. The children have been beside themselves with excitement. How many students should I expect?" "About 15, ranging from 5 years to 13. Most can barely write their own names. Their parents work from sunrise to sunset just keeping body and soul together. No time for teaching letters." The room above the general store was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. Zara set down her bags and removed her hat, pushing back strands of honey-colored hair that had escaped their pins during the long journey. "The schoolhouse is just down the road," Martha continued. "It was a saloon until last year, but the owner died and nobody wanted to run it. The town decided education was more important than whiskey, at least in that location. We still have 2 other saloons for the drinking." Zara managed a tired smile. "When do I begin teaching?" "Day after tomorrow. That gives you time to settle in and prepare." "I will bring some of the mothers by tomorrow to meet you." Martha paused at the door. "There is one thing you should know, Miss Ellsworth. One of your students will be different from the others." "How so?" "Samuel Ashford. He is a rancher, owns the biggest spread within 50 miles. His wife died 2 years ago birthing their 3rd child. He has been trying to manage those children alone ever since, but it is not going well. The oldest is 10, and none of them know a letter from a fence post." "I will do my best to help them," Zara said sincerely. Martha's expression softened. "I am sure you will, dear. But there is more. Samuel himself never learned to read, could not afford schooling as a boy, and by the time he could afford it, he was too proud to admit he needed it. He is a hard man, Miss Ellsworth. The frontier makes them that way. Do not expect warmth from him when he brings those children to you." After Martha left, Zara stood at the window watching the sun sink toward the distant mountains. The sky turned shades of orange and purple she had never seen in Boston, colors so vivid they seemed painted by an artist's hand. She thought about the children she would soon teach, and about the rancher who had never learned to read. It struck her as profoundly sad that a man could build an empire in the wilderness, yet remain locked out of the world of books and learning. The next day passed in a blur of introductions. The mothers of Mojave welcomed her with cautious optimism, bringing gifts of preserves and bread, warning her which children were troublemakers and which were shy. Zara toured the converted schoolhouse, noting its rough wooden benches and the single chalkboard someone had carefully mounted on the wall. She unpacked her precious books, arranged her teaching supplies, and tried to imagine this dusty room filled with eager young minds. On her second morning in Mojave, Zara woke before dawn to prepare for her first day of teaching. She dressed carefully in a simple cotton dress more suitable to the desert heat, pinned her hair into a practical bun, and walked to the schoolhouse with her heart hammering against her ribs. The children began arriving as the sun climbed higher. They came in groups and pairs, some walking from town, others arriving on horseback or in wagons driven by parents who lingered only long enough to see their offspring safely inside. Zara greeted each one, learning names and ages, sensing the mix of excitement and nervousness that filled the room. She had just begun to think the Ashford children would not be coming when the door opened and 3 small figures entered, followed by a man who had to duck his head to clear the doorframe. Samuel Ashford was tall and lean, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was deeply tanned, creased at the corners from years of squinting into the sun. He wore dusty work clothes and moved with the loose-limbed grace of someone who spent most of his life on horseback. Despite Martha's warning about his hardness, Zara found herself momentarily unable to look away from him. "Miss Ellsworth." His voice was deep and rough, like gravel shifting. "These are my children. Emma, she is 10, Jacob is 8, and this little one is Rose, just turned 5. Zara smiled at the children, who stared back at her with wide, uncertain eyes. Emma had her father's dark hair and serious expression. Jacob was all freckles and nervous energy. Little Rose clutched a worn rag doll and looked ready to bolt. "Welcome," Zara said warmly. "I am so pleased to have you in class. Please find seats wherever you like." The children scattered to a bench in the back corner. Samuel stood awkwardly for a moment, hat in his hands, seeming to want to say something but not knowing how to begin. "Mr. Ashford, is there anything I should know about your children? Any particular challenges or concerns?" He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "They are good children, Miss Ellsworth. They work hard on the ranch. But their mother handled all the gentler things, and I am not equipped for that kind of teaching. I can break a horse and mend a fence, but I cannot help them with books." There was no shame in his voice, just a statement of fact, but Zara heard the unspoken frustration beneath the words. "I will take good care of them, Mr. Ashford. You have my word." He nodded curtly, settled his hat back on his head, and left without another word. Through the window, Zara watched him mount a big bay horse and ride off toward the open desert, sitting straight in the saddle like he was part of the animal itself. The first day of school was chaos. The children were restless, unaccustomed to sitting still for hours at a time. Zara had students ranging from 5 to 13, all with different skill levels and needs. Some could manage basic addition, while others did not know their letters. She moved between groups, coaxing and encouraging, trying to establish order while not crushing their spirits. By the time she dismissed them in the late afternoon, she was exhausted. Her voice was hoarse, her feet ached, and she had chalk dust covering her dress. But she had also seen moments of breakthrough. A shy girl named Margaret had read her first complete sentence. Jacob Ashford had successfully written his name for the first time, his tongue poking out in concentration as he formed each letter. Rose had fallen asleep on the bench during the afternoon, and Emma had gently covered her little sister with a shawl without being asked. Samuel Ashford arrived precisely at dismissal time to collect his children. He waited outside, leaning against the schoolhouse wall, and Zara found herself watching through the window as Emma, Jacob, and Rose ran to him. His stern expression softened immediately, and he crouched down to Rose's level, listening to her excited chatter about her first day. The transformation was remarkable. This was not the hard man Martha had described, but a father who clearly loved his children deeply. The first weeks of teaching fell into a rhythm. Zara arrived early each morning to prepare lessons. The children filed in, bringing with them the dust and energy of the desert. She taught reading and writing, arithmetic and geography, using every method she had learned in her training. Slowly, steadily, she began to see progress. The Ashford children fascinated her. Emma was bright and capable, absorbing information like a sponge, but she carried a weight of responsibility that seemed too heavy for her young shoulders. Jacob was all enthusiasm, quick to laugh but also quick to lose focus. Rose was the baby, demanding attention but also genuinely sweet. Zara found herself looking forward to their arrival each day, and she noticed that Samuel was always punctual, always polite, always watching his children with that mixture of pride and worry that marked him as a man trying his best in impossible circumstances. One afternoon in late September, about 6 weeks into the school term, Emma stayed after class to help Zara clean the chalkboard. The other children had rushed out into the golden afternoon light, eager to enjoy the brief respite before the desert cooled. "Miss Ellsworth, may I ask you something?" Emma's voice was quiet, hesitant. "Of course, Emma, you can ask me anything. My father wants to know what we are learning, but when we try to show him, he gets quiet and goes outside. I think it makes him sad that he cannot read the words I show him." Emma looked down at her hands. "Is there a way to teach a grown man to read? Someone who is too old for school?" Zara's heart clenched. She had suspected this might be the case, had seen the way Samuel avoided looking at the books his children carried, how he always asked them to tell him what they were learning rather than show him the written words. A person is never too old to learn, Emma. But teaching an adult is different from teaching children. It would take time and patience, and the person would have to want to learn very badly. Do you think your father would be willing to try? Emma's face brightened with hope. "I think so, Miss Ellsworth. I truly do. He wants to help us, I can tell. He asks Jacob to recite his multiplication tables, and he listens to me read every night, but I see how he looks at the pages, like he is standing outside a house with all the windows lit up, wishing he could go inside." The metaphor was so unexpectedly poignant that Zara had to blink back sudden tears. "Would you like me to speak with him about it? Could you? He is proud, Miss Ellsworth. He would never ask for himself, but maybe if you offered, he might say yes." That evening, as Samuel arrived to collect his children, Zara asked if she might have a word with him in private. He looked immediately wary, his shoulders tensing. "Are my children causing problems?" "Not at all. They are wonderful students. I wanted to discuss something else entirely." She waited until Emma, Jacob, and Rose had wandered a polite distance away before continuing. "Mr. Ashford, Emma tells me you take an active interest in their education. That is admirable. I want them to have what I did not," he said simply. "Then perhaps you would consider allowing me to teach you as well." The silence that followed was so complete that Zara could hear the wind moving through the creosote bushes outside. Samuel's face had gone carefully blank, but she saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Embarrassment, hope, fear. "I am too old to sit with children," he said finally. "I would teach you separately. Early morning before the children arrive, or in the evening after they leave, whatever suits your schedule." She kept her voice gentle but firm. "There is no shame in learning, Mr. Ashford. Only in refusing to try." He was quiet for so long that she thought he would refuse. Then he cleared his throat roughly. "How long would it take?" "That depends on you. Some adults learn to read basic texts in a few months. Others take longer. But I promise you, if you are willing to work at it, I can teach you. The children cannot know. Not until I can actually do it. I will not have them see me struggle. They will not know unless you choose to tell them. Samuel looked out toward the horizon, where the sun was beginning its descent. The light caught the planes of his face, highlighting the weathering of years spent in the elements. I will think on it, Miss Ellsworth. But the next morning, before dawn had fully broken, Zara heard a knock on the schoolhouse door. She had arrived early to prepare lessons and opened it to find Samuel Ashford standing there, hat in his hands, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. I am here to learn, he said. The lessons began that morning in the cool stillness before the rest of Mojave woke. Zara started with the basics, the same alphabet she taught to 5-year-olds, but she moved faster, building on Samuel's life experience and natural intelligence. He was not a stupid man, just an uneducated one, and she quickly realized he had a sharp mind beneath his rough exterior. He sat at the student bench, his large frame cramped in the space designed for children, and methodically copied letters onto a slate. His hands, calloused and scarred from ranch work, gripped the chalk awkwardly at first, but he was determined. When he made mistakes, he erased them without complaint and tried again. You are doing well, Zara encouraged after that first session. You have good focus. I have broken horses that were easier than this, Samuel said, but there was the ghost of humor in his voice. They fell into a pattern. Samuel arrived each morning at dawn, and for an hour before the children came, Zara taught him. She watched him progress from individual letters to simple words, from words to basic sentences. He never complained about the difficulty, never made excuses when he struggled. He simply worked, with the same steady determination he likely brought to everything in his life. As the weeks passed, Zara found herself thinking about Samuel Ashford at odd moments throughout the day. She noticed details about him that had nothing to do with teaching. The way he always smelled faintly of leather and sage. How he rolled his shoulders when he was frustrated, trying to work out the tension. The rare smile that transformed his stern face into something almost boyish. The gentleness in his hands when he absently touched his children's heads as they left each afternoon. She told herself it was natural to take interest in a dedicated student. That her accelerating heartbeat when she heard his morning knock was simply anticipation of a rewarding teaching session. That the warmth spreading through her chest when he successfully read his first complete sentence had nothing to do with the way his face lit up with pride. But she knew she was lying to herself. It was in October, nearly 2 months after his lessons began, that everything changed. Samuel had just finished reading a passage from a primer about farming, stumbling only slightly over a few longer words, when he looked up at her with such genuine joy that Zara forgot to breathe. I did it, he said, wonder in his voice. I actually read that whole page. You did. You are making remarkable progress, Samuel. She had not meant to use his first name. It slipped out naturally, intimately, and she saw his eyes widen slightly at the familiarity. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, and Zara felt the air between them charged with something she could not quite name. Zara, he said quietly, testing her name like it was something precious. May I call you Zara, at least when the children are not around? Yes, she whispered. He stood up from the bench, unfolding his tall frame, and took a step closer to her. They were standing near the window, the early morning light painting everything gold, and Zara could see the depths of his gray eyes, the sincerity written across his weathered face. I need to tell you something, Samuel said. I did not come here just to learn reading. I mean, I did at first, but then I kept coming because being near you became the best part of my day. Watching you teach, listening to your voice, seeing the way you care about my children. About all the children. You brought something to this town, to my family, that has been missing for too long." Zara's heart was hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. "What did I bring? Light, hope, beauty." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek with rough fingertips. "I know I am just a rancher who is barely learning his letters. I know you came from a fine city with education and culture, and I have nothing to offer you but a hard life in a hard land. But I would be a liar if I did not tell you that I have fallen in love with you, Zara Ellsworth." The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw and terrifying. Zara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming rightness of this moment. "I left Boston because I wanted adventure," she said softly. "I wanted to make a difference, to see the wide western sky, to teach children who truly needed me. But I never expected to find this, to find you. I have been trying so hard not to let myself feel what I feel, telling myself it was inappropriate, that I was your teacher and you were the parent of my students. But Samuel Ashford, you have been teaching me just as much as I have been teaching you. You have shown me what real strength looks like, what dedication and love and determination mean. I have fallen in love with you too." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, as if she were something fragile that might break. His lips were warm, slightly chapped from the desert wind, and tasted faintly of the coffee he always drank before arriving. Zara leaned into him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the way his arms came around her like a shelter from all the harshness of the world. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "What do we do now?" "Now," Zara smiled. "Now you continue learning to read, and we continue teaching your children, and we figure out the rest as we go. That's simple. Nothing about love is simple. But we can start there." The sound of wagon wheels and children's voices drifted through the window. The school day was about to begin. Samuel stepped back reluctantly, picking up his hat from where it had fallen on the bench. "Tonight," he said, "after I bring the children home. May I call on you properly? Take you for a walk, maybe? I want to court you the right way, Zara, not hidden away in the early morning like something shameful. I would like that very much." He left through the back door just as the first students began arriving at the front, and Zara touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss, wondering how her entire life had transformed in the space of a single conversation. That evening, Samuel arrived at the general store wearing clean clothes and carrying a handful of desert flowers he must have ridden far to find. Mrs. Henderson, who had noticed the way the wind was blowing weeks ago, gave Zara a knowing smile as she descended the stairs to meet him. They walked through Mojave as the sun set, painting the sky in impossible colors. Samuel told her about his life, about growing up poor in Texas, about coming to California with nothing but a horse and a dream of owning land. He spoke of his late wife, Sarah, whom he had married young and loved deeply, though differently than what he felt now. He talked about the pain of losing her, of watching her slip away after Rose's birth, unable to help, unable to save her. "I thought I would never feel this way again," Samuel admitted as they paused at the edge of town, looking out at the vast desert. "After Sarah died, I focused everything on the children and the ranch. I told myself that was enough, that I did not need anything else. But then you arrived, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want something for myself, to want someone." Zara took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I never let myself think about love before. I was so focused on education, on my career, on proving that a woman could make her own way in the world. My mother wanted me to marry some Boston gentleman and have babies and host tea parties. I wanted more than that. But now I realize I can have both. I can teach and love. I can be independent and also be part of something bigger than myself. The children love you already, Samuel said. Emma talks about you constantly. Jacob wants to impress you so badly he practices his writing at home without being asked. Even little Rose draws pictures for you. They are wonderful children. You have done well with them, Samuel. I have done my best. But they need more than I can give them. They need softness and gentleness. They need someone who can teach them not just letters but how to be good people, how to think and dream and hope. Over the following weeks, Samuel continued his early morning lessons while also courting Zara properly in the evenings. The town quickly noticed, and opinion was divided. Some thought it was romantic that the gruff rancher had fallen for the pretty schoolteacher. Others worried about impropriety, about how it would look if the teacher married one of the parents. Martha Henderson proved to be a staunch ally. "Let them talk," she told Zara one afternoon while they sipped tea in the general store. "You and Samuel are both adults. You have conducted yourselves properly, and those children need a mother. Anyone with eyes can see that Emma is trying to raise herself and her siblings while being a child herself. If you love Samuel and he loves you, then the rest is just noise." But the noise grew louder when Reverend Walsh, the circuit preacher who came through Mojave once a month, heard about the courtship and expressed concerns to the town council. He argued that it was inappropriate for an unmarried woman to be teaching impressionable children while conducting a romantic relationship, that it set a bad example. Samuel heard about the meeting and showed up at the schoolhouse one afternoon in a cold fury. "They want you to choose," he said without preamble. "The council, between teaching and courting me, they think it is scandalous." Zara felt her own anger rise. "That is absurd. I have done nothing wrong. We have done nothing wrong." "I know that. You know that. But the Reverend has influence, and some of the more religious families are threatening to pull their children from school if you do not end things with me." Samuel paced the small room like a caged animal. "I will not let you lose your position because of me. This town needs you. The children need you. And what about what I need?" Zara stood and faced him. "Samuel, I did not come all this way to let small-minded people dictate my life. If they want me to choose, then I choose you. I choose us. You would give up teaching. I would give up this particular job in this particular school, but I could still teach your children at home. I could tutor other children privately. There are always options." She took his hands. "What I cannot do is give you up, not now, not when I have just found you." Samuel pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do. We deserve each other." The crisis resolved itself in an unexpected way. The next Sunday, when Reverend Walsh arrived for services, he found himself confronted by a delegation of mothers, led by Martha Henderson, and including several of the women whose children attended school. They informed him, in no uncertain terms, that Miss Ellsworth was the best thing to happen to Mojave in years, that their children were learning more than they had ever dreamed possible, and that if he continued to make trouble, they would find themselves a new preacher. Faced with a revolt from the very people he was supposed to serve, Reverend Walsh backed down. He made a show of saying he would pray for guidance, but the practical effect was that he stopped trying to force Zara to choose between her career and her heart. "You made enemies for me," Zara said to Martha afterward. "I made the right choice," Martha corrected. "Some battles are worth fighting. Love is one of them. Education is another. You represent both." By November, Samuel could read simple books on his own. The breakthrough came one evening when Emma was struggling with a particularly difficult passage from a history text. Samuel, who had stopped by the schoolhouse to collect the children, listened to her frustration, then quietly took the book and read the passage aloud, smoothly and clearly. The silence that followed was profound. Emma stared at her father with her mouth open. Jacob whooped with joy. Rose clapped her small hands. And Samuel, tough rancher Samuel Ashford, had tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "You learned," Emma whispered. "You learned to read." "Miss Ellsworth taught me," Samuel said, looking at Zara with such love and gratitude that she felt her own eyes fill. "Every morning before you children arrived, she taught me my letters just like she teaches you. I wanted to surprise you, wanted to wait until I was really good at it. But I guess the secret is out now." Emma threw her arms around her father's waist. "I am so proud of you, Papa. I am proud of you too, sweetheart. You and Jacob and Rose, you have all worked so hard." He looked at Zara over Emma's head. "We have a good teacher." That night after the children went home, Samuel asked Zara to marry him. There was no ring, no elaborate proposal. They were standing in the schoolhouse, surrounded by slates and books and the smell of chalk dust, and he simply said, "Marry me, Zara, be my wife, be a mother to my children. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy." "Yes," Zara said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." They married in December, in a simple ceremony attended by the whole town. Zara wore a dress that Martha and the other women had helped her sew, a beautiful creation of cream-colored silk that must have cost more than she wanted to know. Samuel wore his best suit, looking uncomfortable but handsome. Emma, Jacob, and Rose stood up with them, beaming with pride. After the ceremony, as they stood together accepting congratulations from the townspeople, Zara felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had come to Mojave seeking adventure and purpose. She had found both, but she had also found something she had not known she was missing. A home, a family, a love that was real and deep and transformative. The wedding celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and more food than Zara had seen since leaving Boston. Samuel danced with her awkwardly, admitting he had no skill at it, but his hand was warm and steady on her waist and his eyes never left her face. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as they swayed to the music. "Life on the ranch is not easy. Early mornings, hard work, isolation. It is nothing like what you are used to." "I am sure," Zara said firmly. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in the house Samuel had built with his own hands. It was a simple structure, but solid and well-made, with a view of the mountains from the front porch. The children had been sent to stay with Martha for the night, giving Samuel and Zara privacy. Inside, Samuel was nervous, almost shy. "I want to do right by you," he said as they stood in the bedroom. "I want you to be happy here." Zara kissed him, pouring all her love and certainty into the contact. "I am happy. I am exactly where I want to be." They made love slowly, learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure and what brought gasps of joy. Samuel was gentle but passionate, treating Zara like she was precious, something to be cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together, listening to the desert wind outside and the steady beat of each other's hearts. "I used to think I had my life figured out," Zara murmured against his chest. "I thought I knew exactly what I wanted and how to get it, but the universe had different plans." "Better plans?" Samuel asked, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her back. "Much better plans." The next morning they collected the children and began their new life as a family. It was an adjustment for everyone. The children were excited to have Zara living with them, but also uncertain how to act around her in this new role. Emma, in particular, seemed torn between welcoming a mother figure and feeling disloyal to the mother she had lost. Zara approached it carefully, never trying to replace Sarah but creating her own space in the family. She cooked meals and mended clothes, but she also continued teaching the children every evening, turning the kitchen table into a makeshift classroom. She told them stories, played games with them, listened to their worries and dreams. Samuel watched these interactions with obvious gratitude and growing love. Zara would catch him staring at her sometimes as she helped Rose with her letters or laughed at one of Jacob's jokes, and the expression on his face made her heart swell. She continued teaching at the school in Mojave, riding into town each morning on a gentle mare Samuel had given her as a wedding present. It was a long commute, nearly an hour each way, but Zara loved the quiet time, the chance to watch the desert wake up, the feeling of independence the ride gave her. The school continued to thrive under her guidance. More families heard about the quality of education their children could receive and moved to Mojave specifically so their children could attend. The town council voted to expand the schoolhouse, adding a second room so Zara could separate the younger students from the older ones. At home, the Ashford ranch flourished as well. Samuel's cattle business grew, and he hired additional hands to help with the work. He and Zara would often sit together in the evenings after the children were asleep, and he would practice his reading while she graded papers or prepared lessons. Sometimes she would read aloud to him from books she loved, introducing him to worlds he had never imagined. "Listen to this," she said one evening, reading from a volume of poetry. "I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it." Samuel was quiet for a moment, absorbing the words. "That is beautiful. That is exactly how I feel about you." The poet's name is E. Cummings. Well, he has not written this yet, actually. This book is by someone else, but I like the sentiment. "Read it again," Samuel requested, and Zara did, watching his face as he committed the words to memory. Their first winter together was mild by most standards but still challenging for Zara, who was not accustomed to the isolation of ranch life. The desert could be brutally cold at night, and there were days when the wind blew so hard it was dangerous to go outside. But she adapted, learning to cook on a wood stove, to preserve food, to entertain children stuck indoors for days at a time. Samuel taught her to ride better, taking her on tours of the ranch property, showing her the springs where cattle gathered, and the canyons where ancient peoples had left paintings on the rocks. She fell in love with the stark beauty of the desert, the way light transformed the landscape throughout the day, the surprising abundance of life in what seemed like a barren wasteland. In the spring, Zara discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with a mixture of joy and terror. She had watched Sarah's death tear Samuel apart, had seen how much he feared losing another woman he loved to childbirth. When she told him, sitting on their bed one evening after the children were asleep, she saw that fear flash across his face before he could hide it. But then he pulled her close, his hand splaying protectively over her still flat stomach. "I am scared," he admitted. "I will not lie to you. I am terrified of going through that again." "I am scared too," Zara said, "but we cannot let fear rob us of joy. We will find the best doctor, take every precaution, and we will face whatever comes together." "Together," Samuel agreed, though she could still see the worry in his eyes throughout her pregnancy. Samuel was attentively protective, almost comically so. He tried to stop her from teaching, from riding, from doing anything more strenuous than sitting in a chair. Zara, with Martha's help, convinced him that she was not made of glass, and that women had been having babies while living normal lives since the dawn of time. But she did agree to stop teaching during her final months, letting a substitute teacher take over her classes. It was hard to step away, but she recognized the wisdom of focusing on her health and the babies. Emma, Jacob, and Rose were excited about the coming sibling, though Jacob made it clear he hoped for a brother. "Too many girls in this house already," he complained, earning a swat from Emma. The baby came in early December, almost exactly a year after Zara and Samuel's wedding. Labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Zara understood why women feared this process. But Martha, who had delivered half the babies in Mojave, stayed calm and encouraging, and the doctor Samuel had brought in from San Bernardino was skilled and reassuring. When their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, Samuel wept openly. He held the baby with shaking hands, staring at the tiny face in wonder. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you for giving me this." They named him Thomas after Zara's father. Emma, Jacob, and Rose crowded around to meet their new brother, and Zara watched her family with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. This, she thought, was everything she had never known she wanted. The first years of Thomas's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and infinite joys. Zara returned to teaching when Thomas was 6 months old, bringing him with her to the schoolhouse where he napped in a cradle while she instructed the older children. The students loved having a baby in class, and more than once Zara found Rose and some of the other young girls clustered around Thomas, singing to him or making faces to elicit his giggles. Samuel continued to improve his reading and writing, eventually becoming proficient enough to handle the ranch's paperwork himself, instead of relying on help from others. He read to the children every night now, a ritual that had become sacred in the Ashford household. Zara would often pause outside the bedroom door, listening to his deep voice stumbling occasionally over complicated words but persevering, bringing stories to life for his attentive audience. "You have given me so much," Samuel told her one night as they lay in bed, Thomas asleep in his cradle beside them. "Not just our son, but a whole new world. Every book I read, I think about how I would have missed this if you had not come to Mojave. All these stories, all this knowledge. I was living in darkness and did not even know it." "You were never in darkness," Zara corrected. "You built a life, raised children, created something from nothing. That takes its own kind of knowledge and wisdom. I just helped you add another tool to what you already had. You are too generous. I was ignorant and you made me less so. You were uneducated. That is different from ignorant. And now you are both wise and educated, which is a powerful combination." As Thomas grew from baby to toddler, the Ashford family settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emma blossomed into a capable young woman, helping Zara with the younger children and the household chores. Jacob discovered a talent for working with horses, spending hours with his father learning to train and care for the animals. Rose remained the family's sunshine, bright and cheerful, always ready with a hug or a silly song. The school in Mojave continued to expand. By 1882, there were nearly 40 students, and the town hired a second teacher to help Zara manage the load. She found herself becoming not just an instructor, but a mentor to this younger woman, passing on the techniques and approaches that had worked so well for her. Samuel's ranch prospered beyond his initial dreams. He bought adjacent land, expanding his holdings, and his cattle business became one of the most successful in the region. But success did not change him. He remained the same steady, hard-working man Zara had fallen in love with, though perhaps a bit less stern, more likely to smile, more comfortable in his own skin. They added to their family again in 1883, a daughter they named Grace. Unlike Thomas's difficult birth, Grace arrived quickly and easily, as if she was in a hurry to join the chaos of the Ashford household. She had Zara's honey-colored hair and Samuel's gray eyes, and from her first day, she seemed determined to keep up with her older siblings. 5 children, Samuel marveled, holding Grace while the others crowded around. "I have 5 children. How did that happen?" "Well, when a man and woman love each other very much," Zara began teasingly, and Samuel blushed, making the children giggle. Life was not without challenges. There were droughts that threatened the cattle and the ranch's survival. There were years when students dropped out of school because their families needed them to work. There was illness and injury, the constant dangers of frontier life. But through it all, Zara and Samuel faced everything together. When the drought came, they carefully rationed resources and helped struggling neighbors. When an influenza outbreak swept through Mojave, Zara turned the schoolhouse into a makeshift infirmary, nursing sick children back to health with Martha's help. When Samuel broke his leg in a riding accident, Zara managed the ranch's business affairs, drawing on everything she had learned from watching him work. Emma grew into a beautiful young woman, intelligent and capable. When she was 16, a young man from a neighboring ranch began courting her. Samuel was predictably protective, but Zara helped him see that Emma needed to make her own choices to live her own life. "She is too young," Samuel grumbled. "She is exactly the age I was when I came to Mojave," Zara pointed out. "Old enough to teach school, old enough to travel across the country alone, old enough to fall in love. That is different." How? Samuel could not articulate an answer, and eventually he accepted Emma's courtship with as much grace as he could muster. The young man, thankfully, was respectful and hardworking, and Samuel grudgingly admitted he could have been worse. Jacob, meanwhile, discovered a passion for ranching that matched his father's. By the time he was 15, he was managing entire aspects of the ranch operation, showing a natural talent for the work. Samuel watched his son with obvious pride, recognizing that the ranch would be in good hands when the time came to pass it down. Rose remained creative and imaginative, filling notebooks with stories and drawings. Zara encouraged her artistic tendencies, buying her paints and charcoal whenever they could be obtained, seeing in Rose's work a unique vision of the world. Thomas and Grace grew up as partners in crime, constantly getting into mischief together. They had a fort in the barn where they staged elaborate games, and more than once Zara found them covered in mud or hay, having embarked on some adventure that seemed brilliant in their young minds. The years accumulated like dust in the desert, quietly transforming everything. Zara looked in the mirror one morning and saw lines forming at the corners of her eyes, strands of gray threading through her honey-colored hair. She was 35 years old, had been in Mojave for nearly a decade, and could barely remember the young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach so long ago. That woman had been full of idealistic dreams about education and independence. This woman, the one she had become, understood that real life was messier and more beautiful than any dream. Real life was Samuel's hand finding hers in the darkness. Real life was Emma's graduation from the school Zara had built. Real life was the first time Jacob successfully broke a difficult horse. Real life was Rose's painting hanging on the parlor wall. Real life was Thomas and Grace's laughter echoing through the ranch house. One evening in the spring of 1887, Samuel found Zara standing on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing." "How strange life is, how unexpected." She leaned back against him. "I came here to teach children their letters. I never imagined all of this." "Are you happy? Truly happy?" Zara turned in his arms to face him. The years had marked Samuel too. His hair was shot through with silver now, his face more deeply lined. But his eyes still held that same intensity, that same love that had taken her breath away when he first told her how he felt. "I am beyond happy. I am fulfilled. I am exactly where I belong with exactly who I belong with." Samuel kissed her, slow and sweet, a kiss that held a decade of shared experiences, of struggles overcome, of love deepened by time and tested by hardship. "I love you, Zara Ashford. I have loved you from the moment you offered to teach a stubborn rancher his letters. I will love you until the desert turns to ocean and the stars fall from the sky. I love you too. You and this impossible, beautiful life we built together." They stood there as the sun dipped below the horizon, holding each other as the desert cooled and the first stars appeared. From inside the house came the sounds of their children, arguing about something trivial, laughing, living. The sounds of a family. The sounds of home. Emma married her young man, a rancher named William Davis, in a ceremony that filled Mojave's small church to capacity. Samuel walked his daughter down the aisle with tears streaming down his weathered face, and when he placed her hand in William's, Zara saw him whisper something to his new son-in-law that made the young man straighten his shoulders and nod seriously. Later, at the reception, Zara asked Samuel what he had said. "I told him that Emma is the best of all of us, that she is smart and strong and has more courage in her little finger than most men have in their whole bodies. And that if he ever does anything to diminish that light in her, he will answer to me." Zara smiled. "Did you have to threaten him on their wedding day?" "It was not a threat. It was a promise." Samuel's expression softened. "But I also told him that if he loves her and treats her right, he has my full support and will always be welcome in our home." I think he understood both messages. Emma and William settled on his family's ranch, about 15 miles from the Ashford property. She visited regularly, often bringing tales of her new life and, eventually, news that she was expecting her first child. Zara watched Emma navigate pregnancy with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. It seemed impossible that the serious 10-year-old girl who had once asked for help teaching her father to read was now a woman about to become a mother herself. Time, Zara reflected, had a way of moving both glacially slow and impossibly fast. Emma's son, Samuel's first grandchild, arrived in the fall of 1888. They named him Samuel William Davis, honoring both grandfathers, and when Samuel held the baby for the first time, Zara saw emotions play across his face that were too complex to name. Joy, certainly. Pride. But also a kind of wonder, as if he could not quite believe the chain of events that had led to this moment. "My grandson," he said softly. "I have a grandson." "You do," Zara confirmed, watching Emma watch her father. "And he is going to grow up knowing how much his grandfather loves him, how much he loves reading, how hard he worked to learn. That is a gift, Samuel. The gift you gave yourself when you decided to learn is now being passed down to another generation." Jacob, now 18 and confident in his ranching abilities, announced that he wanted to expand the operation, to try breeding horses in addition to cattle. Samuel, who normally would have been cautious about such ventures, surprised everyone by immediately supporting the idea. "The boy has good instincts," Samuel told Zara, "and he is right. We have good pasture land that is not being used to full capacity. Why not try something new?" The horse breeding operation started small but quickly proved successful. Jacob had a gift for selecting quality animals and training them, and within 2 years, people were coming from as far as Los Angeles to buy Ashford horses. Rose, at 13, remained the family's artist and dreamer. She struggled with the practical aspects of ranch life, but excelled in her studies, showing particular talent in literature and composition. Zara encouraged her to write, to pursue her creative passions, even as some of the more traditional townspeople questioned the value of such pursuits. "She should be learning to cook and sew," one woman told Zara at a church social. Dreaming does not keep a house. Dreaming keeps the soul alive, Zara responded. And Rose knows how to cook and sew perfectly well. She can also think critically, express herself clearly, and imagine possibilities beyond what currently exists. Those skills will serve her better than perfect pie crust. Thomas and Grace, now 6 and 4 respectively, were inseparable despite their age difference. They attended the school where Zara taught, though Grace was still too young for formal lessons. Zara found teaching her own children both rewarding and challenging. It was difficult to maintain objectivity, to not show favoritism or, conversely, to not be harder on them than on other students. Samuel helped by reinforcing at home that school was school, and their mother was their teacher during those hours. "You treat Miss Ellsworth with the same respect you would show any teacher," he told them. "And that means following her rules and doing your work without complaint." The school itself had become something Zara was deeply proud of. The literacy rate in Mojave had improved dramatically since her arrival. Children who once would have grown up unable to read or write were now graduating with skills that opened doors to opportunities their parents never had. Several of her former students had gone on to higher education, something that would have been unthinkable before she came to town. She sometimes thought about the advertisement she had answered so many years ago. Had the town council known what they were getting when they hired a young woman from Boston? Had they imagined she would not only teach their children but would marry into the community, put down roots so deep nothing could pull them up? Probably not. But that was the beauty of life's unpredictability. You set out on one path and ended up somewhere entirely different, somewhere better than you could have imagined. In 1890, Samuel was elected to the town council, a position he accepted reluctantly but filled with characteristic dedication. He used his influence to improve infrastructure, to bring in better roads and eventually even telephone lines to Mojave. He advocated for education funding, ensuring that Zara's school had the resources it needed to continue growing. "You are becoming a politician," Zara teased him one evening as he pored over town documents at the kitchen table. "Do not curse me with such labels," Samuel replied, but he was smiling. "I am just trying to make this place better for our children and grandchildren." "Our grandchildren, plural. Emma just told me today that she is expecting again." Samuel looked up, pleasure lighting his face. "Another one, already. Babies tend to come regularly when people are happily married," Zara pointed out. "I suppose they do." Samuel set down his papers and pulled Zara onto his lap, making her laugh. "Should we give Thomas and Grace more siblings? Keep up with Emma." "Samuel Ashford, I am 38 years old. I think my baby-making days are behind me. You look exactly as you did the day I met you." "You are a terrible liar, but I love you for trying." She kissed him softly. "Besides, we have enough children. 5 is plenty. We can focus on being the best parents we can be to the ones we have, and the best grandparents when more grandbabies arrive." "Grandparents," Samuel repeated, shaking his head. "How did I get old enough to be a grandparent, the same way everyone does? One day at a time." That night, after the children were asleep, Zara and Samuel sat on the porch as they often did, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The desert air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and creosote. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, its voice rising and falling in an ancient song. "You ever miss Boston?" Samuel asked. "The culture, the society, all the things you left behind." Zara considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I miss certain things. The symphony, the libraries, the feeling of being surrounded by history. But I do not miss the life I would have lived there. I would have been someone's proper wife, hosting parties I did not care about, having conversations that meant nothing. Here I am myself." I am a teacher who makes a real difference. I am a wife to a man I love beyond reason. I am a mother to children who challenge and delight me every day. I am part of a community. I matter here, Samuel. In Boston, I would have been invisible. You could never be invisible, Samuel said. You shine too bright. You make me shine. This life, this family, this love, it brings out the best in me. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Zara thought about the path that had brought her here, from a prim Boston schoolroom to this rough-hewn porch in the Mojave Desert. Every choice, every turn had led to this moment, to this man, to this life, and she would not change a single thing. The years continued their steady march. Emma had 4 children in quick succession, keeping her busy but also deliriously happy. Jacob married a young woman from a neighboring town, a practical girl named Sarah who shared his passion for horses. Their wedding was a joyous affair, though Samuel joked that he was going to go broke paying for all these celebrations. Rose shocked everyone by deciding she wanted to go to college in San Francisco. It was unheard of for girls from Mojave to pursue higher education, but Rose was determined, and Zara and Samuel supported her dream despite the concerns of other townspeople. "Let them talk," Samuel said, when someone questioned the wisdom of sending a young woman away to school. "My daughter is brilliant, and she deserves every opportunity to develop her talents. If that makes me a progressive father, so be it." Rose thrived in San Francisco, studying literature and art, writing long letters home about her classes and the exciting intellectual atmosphere. She returned during summers and holidays, bringing with her new ideas and perspectives that kept the family on their toes. Thomas showed an interest in law, spending hours reading legal texts that Zara borrowed from a lawyer friend in San Bernardino. Samuel encouraged this interest, seeing in his son a keen mind and a sense of justice that would serve a legal career well. Grace, meanwhile, surprised everyone by declaring she wanted to be a teacher like her mother. "I want to help people learn," she said simply. "I want to make the same kind of difference you made, Mama." Zara's heart swelled with pride. "Then I will teach you everything I know." By 1895, 17 years after Zara had first arrived in Mojave, the town had transformed from a dusty outpost into a thriving community. The school now had 4 teachers and taught children from first grade through high school. The town had a proper church, a doctor's office, several thriving businesses, and even a small library that Zara had been instrumental in establishing. The Ashford Ranch had expanded to become one of the largest in the region. Jacob's horse breeding operation was renowned throughout California. Emma's oldest son was now helping his uncle, showing the same natural talent with animals. The family had put down roots so deep that they were now part of the very foundation of Mojave itself. Samuel and Zara had aged together, their faces marked by sun and time, their bodies bearing the evidence of hard work and hard living. But they remained partners in every sense, still finding joy in each other's company, still able to make each other laugh, still deeply in love. One afternoon, as Zara was finishing up at school, Samuel appeared in the doorway. It was unusual for him to come to town in the middle of the day, and Zara felt a flutter of concern. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," Samuel assured her. "I just realized that in all these years, with all the chaos of raising children and building businesses and living life, I never properly thanked you." "Thank me for what?" Samuel crossed the room, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He took both her hands in his. "For coming here. For staying. For teaching me to read. For loving me. For giving me a life richer than I ever imagined possible. For being exactly who you are." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. Samuel Ashford, you do not need to thank me for any of that. You gave me just as much. You showed me what real strength looks like. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You loved me when I felt unlovable. You supported my dreams even when they conflicted with what people thought I should be doing. We gave these things to each other. Then let me thank you anyway. Samuel pulled a small package from his pocket. I have been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment, and I realized there is no perfect moment, just this one, right now. Zara opened the package to find a delicate silver locket. Inside was a tiny, perfect portrait of their family, Samuel, Zara, and all 5 children, painted in miniature by an artist Samuel must have commissioned. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "I wanted you to have something that captured us, all of us together, because you created this, Zara. You took a lonely rancher and 3 motherless children and taught us how to be a family again. You taught me to read, yes, but you also taught me how to love again, how to hope, how to be more than I was." Zara fastened the locket around her neck, feeling its slight weight settle against her heart. "We taught each other. That is what love does. It makes us better than we were alone." Samuel kissed her, tender and sweet, a kiss that held 17 years of shared mornings and moonlit nights, of children's laughter and quiet conversations, of struggles overcome and joys celebrated. When they pulled apart, Zara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Through the schoolhouse window, she could see Mojave spread out before them, the town they had helped build, the community they were part of. "I should get home," she said eventually. "Grace will be wondering where I am." "She knows where you are. I told her I was coming to collect you." Samuel offered his arm. "Walk with me, Mrs. Ashford. Let us go home together." They walked through town as the afternoon sun began its descent, painting everything in golden light. People waved and called greetings, and Zara responded with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. This was her home. These were her people. This was the life she had built, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one lesson at a time. She had come to teach children their letters. She had ended up teaching a cowboy to read, falling in love, building a family, and creating a legacy that would ripple forward through generations. None of it had been part of her original plan, but all of it was infinitely better than anything she could have planned. As they reached their horses, Samuel helped her mount, his hand lingering on her waist. "Race you home," he suggested, eyes twinkling. "Samuel, we are too old for racing. Speak for yourself. Last one home has to tell Thomas why he cannot have a puppy." Without waiting for a response, Samuel spurred his horse into a gallop, kicking up dust as he headed toward the ranch. Zara laughed, the sound carrying across the desert, and urged her own horse forward. They raced across the open land, side by side, their laughter mingling with the thunder of hoofbeats. The ranch house appeared in the distance, and she could see figures on the porch, their children waiting for them, welcoming them home. This, Zara thought as Samuel reached out to clasp her hand as they rode, their horses perfectly matched in stride. This was everything. This moment, this man, this life. It was imperfect and messy and full of challenges, but it was real and it was theirs and it was beautiful. They slowed as they approached the house, and their children ran out to meet them. Grace reached them first, her face lit with excitement about something that had happened during the day. Thomas was right behind her, already launching into his puppy argument before Samuel had fully dismounted. From inside the house came the sounds of cooking and conversation, the ordinary symphony of family life. Samuel caught Zara's eye over the heads of their children, and in that glance was everything they had shared, everything they had built, everything they meant to each other. No words were necessary. After so many years together, they communicated in looks and touches, in the comfortable shorthand of two people who knew each other completely. That evening, after dinner had been eaten and dishes washed, after homework had been checked and stories read, after the children had finally been coaxed into bed, Zara and Samuel returned to their porch. It had become their ritual, this quiet time together under the stars, and Zara treasured these moments as much as any grand gesture or dramatic event. "Emma sent word that she is coming to visit next week," Samuel said, reading a letter that had arrived earlier. "She wants to bring all the children and stay for a few days. The house will be bursting at the seams," Zara said happily. "I love it when everyone is here together." "We need a bigger house," Samuel mused. "With all the grandchildren and more coming, we are running out of space." "Are you suggesting we add on to the house? Maybe. Or maybe we build something new, something big enough for all of us, with room for family gatherings and holidays, a place where everyone knows they are always welcome." Samuel turned to look at her. "What do you think?" Zara considered the idea. The current house held so many memories, but Samuel was right. They needed more space, especially as the family continued to grow. "I think it is a wonderful idea. We could design it together, make sure it has everything we need." "A library for you," Samuel said immediately. "A proper one with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. You have been storing books in every available corner for years. You deserve a real library. And an office for you, for all your town council work and ranch business. Somewhere quiet where you can focus." They spent the next hour planning their dream house, describing rooms and features, imagining how it would look and feel. It was a pleasant fantasy, but Zara suspected it would become reality. When Samuel set his mind to something, he made it happen. Later, as they prepared for bed, Samuel surprised her by pulling out a book. "I want to read to you tonight," he said. "You read to me. Why not? You have read to me countless times. It is my turn." He opened the book, a collection of poems, and began to read. His voice was steady and clear, only occasionally stumbling over a particularly complex word. He read poem after poem, choosing ones about love and nature and the passage of time. Zara listened with tears streaming down her face, overcome by the beauty of the moment. This man, who had once been unable to read a single word, was now reading poetry to her. It was a full circle, a completion of something that had begun 17 years ago in a dusty schoolhouse. When he finished, Samuel set the book aside and wiped her tears. "Did I do that badly?" "You did perfectly. Samuel, you read beautifully. I am so proud of you." "I am proud of us," Samuel corrected, "of everything we have accomplished together." They made love that night with a tenderness born of long familiarity and deep affection. There was no urgency, no frantic passion, just a slow exploration, a reaffirmation of their connection. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Zara's head on Samuel's chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. "I never thanked you for taking a chance on me," Zara murmured. "For seeing past the scared schoolteacher from Boston to the person I could become. I never thanked you for seeing past the illiterate rancher to the person I could become." Samuel kissed the top of her head. "We saved each other, Zara. We gave each other the courage to be more than we were." "We did," Zara agreed, already drifting toward sleep. "We really did." The years that followed continued to be full and rich. The new house was built, a sprawling structure with plenty of room for family gatherings. The library Samuel had promised Zara became her favorite room, filled with books she had collected over the years and new ones she continued to add. Samuel's office became the nerve center of his various business and civic activities. Rose graduated from college and returned to Mojave to teach alongside her mother, bringing fresh ideas and perspectives to the school. Thomas went away to study law and eventually returned to open a practice in town. Grace married a young teacher from San Bernardino, and they settled nearby, starting their own family. Emma and Jacob continued to expand their families and their respective businesses. The Ashford name became synonymous with quality horses and cattle throughout California. Family gatherings were loud, chaotic affairs with cousins running everywhere and multiple generations talking over each other. Through it all, Samuel and Zara remained the steady center. They were the matriarch and patriarch, the ones everyone turned to for advice and support. They mediated disputes, celebrated triumphs, mourned losses, and held the family together with love and wisdom. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. The house was packed with people: children, grandchildren, friends from town, even former students who had traveled from as far away as San Francisco to attend. During the celebration, Emma stood up to give a toast. "I was 10 years old when Miss Ellsworth came to Mojave," she began. "I was trying to be the mother my siblings needed, trying to keep our house running, trying to take care of my father who was drowning in grief. I was angry that he was sending us to school when we were needed at home. I did not understand why it mattered if we could read or write." Emma paused, looking at her father with obvious love. "But my father knew something I did not. He knew that education was the key to a better life. And when Miss Ellsworth offered to teach him too, he swallowed his pride and learned. Watching my father learn to read was one of the most powerful experiences of my childhood. It taught me that it is never too late to grow, never too late to change, never too late to become more than you were." She turned to Zara. "And you, Miss Ellsworth, or Mom, as we all call you now. You did not just teach us letters and numbers. You taught us to dream, to hope, to believe we could be anything we wanted. You showed us that love can heal, that families can be rebuilt, that strangers can become essential parts of our lives. You gave us everything." There was not a dry eye in the room. Samuel stood and pulled both Emma and Zara into a hug, and soon they were surrounded by the entire family, everyone trying to embrace at once. Later, after the guests had departed and the house had quieted, Zara and Samuel found themselves alone on their porch once again. The night was cool and clear, the stars brilliant overhead. 25 years, Samuel said wonderingly. "It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "I know exactly what you mean," Zara leaned against him. "Sometimes I still feel like that uncertain young woman who stepped off the stagecoach, and sometimes I feel ancient and wise. You are wise. You are the wisest person I know. I have made plenty of mistakes. We both have. But we made them together, and we learned from them together. That is what matters." Zara thought about all they had experienced, all they had built. 5 children raised to adulthood, successful and happy. Numerous grandchildren, with more surely on the way. A school that had educated hundreds of students. A ranch that employed dozens of people and contributed to the region's economy. A community that was stronger because they were part of it. But more than any external accomplishment, they had created something intangible but infinitely valuable. A love that had endured through challenges and changes, that had deepened rather than faded with time, that had become the foundation for everything else in their lives. "What are you thinking about?" Samuel asked. "About how grateful I am for all of it. The good and the bad, the easy and the hard. Every moment led us here to this porch, to this life, to each other. I would not change anything." "Neither would I," Samuel said. "Not a single thing." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of the desert, the whisper of wind through brush, the cry of a night bird, the rustle of small creatures going about their nocturnal business. These were the sounds that had surrounded them for a quarter century, the soundtrack of their life together. Remember when you first came to learn reading? Zara asked suddenly. How nervous you were, Samuel chuckled. I thought I was going to be terrible at it. I thought you would lose patience with me and give up. I never considered giving up. You were the most dedicated student I ever had. I had good motivation. I wanted to impress you. Samuel turned to look at her, his face visible in the starlight. Did it work? Did I impress you? You impressed me long before you learned to read, Zara said honestly. You impressed me with your dedication to your children, your integrity, your strength. The reading was just another facet of who you were. But yes, watching you learn, seeing your determination, that definitely impressed me. It still does. I still read every day, Samuel said. Even after all these years, I still marvel at it, at being able to look at marks on a page and have them transform into stories and ideas and knowledge. It still feels like magic. It is magic, Zara agreed. The magic of human communication, of ideas transcending time and space. I have been reading my whole life, and it still amazes me too. As the years advanced into the new century, Samuel and Zara found themselves entering a new phase of life. They were no longer the young couple building a life together, but established elders, respected and loved by the entire community. Samuel eventually retired from the town council, turning his attention fully to the ranch and his family. Zara reduced her teaching responsibilities, working part-time and focusing on mentoring younger teachers, including her daughter Rose. They spent more time together, taking long rides across the ranch land, revisiting the places that held memories for them. They sat on their porch for hours, reading and talking and simply being together. The urgency of youth had faded, replaced by a deep contentment, a satisfaction with what they had built and who they had become. The grandchildren brought them endless joy. Samuel taught the boys to ride and rope, passing on skills he had learned decades ago. Zara read to all of them, sparking their imaginations, encouraging their questions, nurturing their curiosity. They were Grandpa Samuel and Grandma Zara, beloved figures who always had time for a story or a hug, who could be counted on for wisdom and cookies in equal measure. In 1905, Mojave celebrated its 50th anniversary as an incorporated town. As part of the celebration, the town council commissioned a history of the community, and the historian spent considerable time interviewing Samuel and Zara about the early days. You two are part of the foundation of this place, the historian told them. Your contributions to education, to business, to civic life have shaped Mojave in profound ways. We just did what needed doing, Samuel said with characteristic modesty. You did far more than that, the historian insisted. You created a legacy. At the anniversary celebration, held in the newly built town hall, Samuel and Zara were honored for their contributions. They stood together as the mayor praised their work, as former students shared testimonials, as their children and grandchildren beamed with pride. I came to Mojave 27 years ago, Zara said when asked to speak. I came to teach children their letters, to make a small difference in a small town. I never imagined I would find my home here, my family, my life's work. This town gave me everything. It gave me the opportunity to do meaningful work. It gave me the love of my life. She squeezed Samuel's hand. It gave me a purpose and a place to belong. I am the one who is grateful to all of you for letting me be part of this community. Samuel spoke next, his voice still strong despite his advancing years. I was a man who could not read when Miss Ellsworth arrived. I was struggling to raise my children alone, barely keeping my head above water. She taught me to read, yes, but she taught me so much more. She taught me that it is never too late to learn, never too late to grow, never too late to love. She gave me back my life and made it better than I ever dreamed possible. Everything good in my life flows from the day she arrived in Mojave. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Zara and Samuel danced together, moving slowly across the floor, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends. "We made it," Samuel whispered in her ear. "We built something that will last beyond us." "We did," Zara agreed. "Together." As they moved into their 60s, health challenges began to emerge. Samuel developed arthritis in his hands, making it difficult to write, though he could still read. Zara's eyesight began to fail, requiring increasingly strong glasses. But they adapted, helping each other, compensating for each other's limitations. When Samuel's hands hurt too much to write, Zara became his scribe, recording his thoughts and business correspondence. When Zara's eyes tired, Samuel read to her, his voice bringing her beloved books to life. They had become two halves of a whole, each incomplete without the other. Their children worried about them, wanted them to slow down even more, to let others take over all responsibilities. But Samuel and Zara resisted being put out to pasture. They continued to contribute, to participate, to engage with life fully even as their bodies began to betray them. "I am not dead yet," Samuel said with some irritation when Jacob suggested he should stop riding out to check on the cattle. "I can still sit a horse. I can still teach," Zara said firmly when Rose suggested she retire completely. "Maybe not full-time, but I can tutor students who need extra help. I can still make a difference." Their stubbornness was respected if not entirely approved of by their offspring. But the family recognized that Samuel and Zara's engagement with life was part of what kept them vital, that forcing them into complete retirement would diminish them. One evening in the spring of 1912, 34 years after Zara had first arrived in Mojave, she and Samuel sat on their porch watching yet another spectacular sunset. They had been married for 33 years, had known each other for 34, and the depth of their connection was such that they often knew what the other was thinking without words being spoken. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had not answered that advertisement?" Samuel asked. Zara had asked herself that question many times over the years. "I would have stayed in Boston, probably married some businessman my mother approved of, had a couple of children, hosted proper dinners and attended the right social events. It would have been a fine life by most standards. But not your life. No, not the life I was meant to live." She turned to look at him. "And you? What if you had never let me teach you to read?" "I would have remained stuck," Samuel said after a moment of thought. "Not just unable to read, but unable to move forward. Sarah's death nearly destroyed me. I was just going through the motions, surviving but not really living. Learning to read broke something open in me, reminded me that growth was possible, that change was not something to fear. And falling in love with you, with my teacher, completed that transformation. You saved me, Zara. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Zara said, repeating what had become their refrain over the years. "That is what love does." As the years continued their steady progression, Samuel and Zara grew older together with grace and dignity. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by 4 generations of family. Emma was now a grandmother herself, her oldest son having married and started his own family. Jacob's horse breeding operation had become legendary throughout the West. Rose had published several books of poetry that received critical acclaim. Thomas had become a respected judge. Grace had followed in her mother's footsteps, becoming a beloved teacher and then a school principal. The Ashford family had grown into a small dynasty, influential and respected. But at the heart of it all were Samuel and Zara, the foundation upon which everything else had been built. In 1920, Zara celebrated her 68th birthday. She was frail now, her body worn by years of hard living and the simple passage of time. But her mind remained sharp, and her love for her family and her community never wavered. Samuel, at 71, moved more slowly than he once had, but he still rode out to check on the ranch most days, still read voraciously, still looked at Zara with the same love that had been there from the beginning. One afternoon in late autumn, Zara suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. The family gathered, fearing the worst, but she rallied, her indomitable spirit refusing to give up. She would never fully recover, but she adapted to her limitations with the same determination she had brought to everything else in her life. Samuel became her primary caretaker, refusing to let anyone else take over that role. He helped her dress, fed her when her hands would not cooperate, read to her for hours every day. The man who had once been too proud to admit he could not read now devoted himself entirely to the woman who had taught him, showing her the same patience and dedication she had once shown him. "You do not have to do this," Zara said to him one day, her words slightly slurred from the stroke. "The children can help. You should not have to bear this burden alone." "You are not a burden," Samuel said fiercely. "You are my wife, my love, my life. Taking care of you is not a burden. It is a privilege." They had almost 2 more years together after the stroke. Years when their pace slowed even further, when their world contracted to the confines of their house and porch, when the visits from children and grandchildren became the highlights of their days. But they were together, and that made everything bearable. Samuel read to Zara every day, working through all her favorite books, revisiting stories they had shared over the decades. Sometimes she would correct him on a word, her teacher's instinct still sharp despite everything. Sometimes she would just close her eyes and listen, a small smile on her face. "I never get tired of your voice," she told him. "Even after all these years, hearing you read brings me such joy." "I never get tired of reading to you," Samuel replied. "Every word I speak is a thank you for teaching me, for loving me, for giving me this life." In the spring of 1922, Zara grew weaker. The family was called, and they gathered around her bed, filling the room with love and memories. She looked at each of them in turn, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, seeing the legacy she and Samuel had created. "I am so proud of all of you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Be good to each other. Love each other. Take care of each other." When everyone else had said their goodbyes and drifted out of the room, Samuel climbed into bed beside her, holding her carefully. "I am not ready to let you go," he said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I know," Zara whispered, "but it is time, my love. I am tired. I have lived such a full life, such a beautiful life, because of you, because of all of this." She touched his face with a trembling hand. "Promise me you will not give up. Promise me you will keep living, keep loving. The children still need you. The grandchildren need you. You have so much still to give." "I promise," Samuel said, though he did not know how he would keep that promise. Losing her felt like losing a part of himself. "Thank you," Zara said, "for everything. For learning to read just to impress me, for loving me so completely. For giving me this extraordinary life. I love you, Samuel Ashford. I will love you beyond this life into whatever comes next." "I love you too," Samuel said. "Forever, beyond forever." Zara died peacefully that night, with Samuel holding her, whispering words of love into her ear until the very end. The town of Mojave mourned her passing, recognizing that one of its founding pillars had fallen. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. Former students, fellow teachers, friends, family. Samuel stood at the graveside, supported by his children, and watched as they lowered the woman who had changed his life into the desert earth. He thought about that day 44 years ago when a pretty schoolteacher had stepped off a stagecoach and into his world. He thought about early morning lessons, about learning his letters, about falling in love. He thought about children and grandchildren, about sunsets watched from their porch, about books read and conversations shared. He had lived 73 years, but his real life had begun the day Zara Ellsworth arrived in Mojave. Everything before that had been prologue. Everything after would be epilogue. But he had promised her he would keep living, and Samuel Ashford had never broken a promise to his wife. So he returned home, surrounded by family, and he continued on. He spent time with his children and grandchildren. He still went to the schoolhouse sometimes, sitting in the empty room, remembering. He read every day, honoring Zara's gift to him. And every evening he sat on their porch and talked to her as the sun set and the stars emerged. He told her about his day, about the family, about everything and nothing. He felt her presence there beside him, felt her hand in his even though he could no longer physically touch her. 2 years after Zara's death, Samuel was reading on the porch one evening when he felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He set down his book, Zara's favorite volume of poetry, and smiled. It was time. He was ready. They found him the next morning, still sitting in his chair, the poetry book open in his lap, a peaceful expression on his face. He had died doing what Zara had taught him to do, what had brought them together, reading. The family buried Samuel next to Zara in the Mojave cemetery. On their shared headstone, Emma had inscribed a simple message. She came to teach his children their letters. The cowboy learned to read just to impress her. Together, they built a legacy of love. The Ashford family continued to flourish long after Samuel and Zara were gone. The ranch remained in operation, passed down through generations. The school they had fought for continued to educate children. Their story became part of Mojave's history, told and retold, a reminder that love can transform lives, that education opens doors, that two people meeting at the right moment can change the course of countless futures. Emma lived to be 92, long enough to see her great-great-grandchildren born. She often told them about her father learning to read, about the schoolteacher from Boston who became her second mother, about the love story that had shaped her entire family. They showed us what was possible, she would say. They taught us that it is never too late to change, never too late to learn, never too late to love. The house Samuel and Zara built together stood for over 100 years, eventually becoming a historical landmark. The library Samuel had created for Zara was preserved exactly as she had left it. Her books still lining the shelves, her favorite chair still positioned by the window. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the desert wind blew just right, people swore they could hear voices on the porch. A man reading poetry to his wife, a woman's soft laughter in response, the sound of two people who had found each other against all odds and had created something beautiful that would endure long after they were gone. The story of Samuel and Zara became more than just a family legend. It became a testament to the transformative power of love and education, a reminder that the smallest decisions can have the most profound impacts, that strangers can become family, that learning is never wasted, and that true love, once found, never truly ends. Their legacy lived on in every child who learned to read in the schools they had helped build, in every student who dreamed bigger because a teacher encouraged them, in every family that chose love over pride, growth over stagnation, hope over despair. Samuel and Zara's story was woven into the very fabric of Mojave, California, a permanent part of the town's history and identity. And in the end, that was more than enough. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they had found it. They had shown that a schoolteacher and a cowboy, brought together by circumstance and bound together by choice, could create something that would echo through generations. She came to teach his children their letters. The cowboy learned to read just to impress her. And together, they wrote a love story for the ages, one that proved that the greatest adventures often begin with the smallest steps, and that the most profound transformations often start with something as simple as learning to read.